Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the last panel discussion as the Art Dubai Digital Summit comes to a close. Over the last 3 days, we've been discussing all sorts of topics around Web3, the digital ecosystem, AI, big international topics, and now we are rounding out the summit with a talk of some people here in Dubai. We're talking about the Dubai's digital art scene today. We also talking about community, especially in Dubai. We're in a really fortunate place, I think. Dubai is a very interesting city. It's a crossroad of cultures, art, technology, future thinkers, entrepreneurship, and actually the government is really supportive of a lot of that. So it's a good place to be to talk about these things today. So thank you for coming. I will introduce our panelists. So we have Mr. Faisal Zaidi from Crypto Oasis. I was going to give you a full title. Co-founder of Crypto Oasis, a MENA-focused blockchain ecosystem. Dr. Zinka Bejtic, got it right, Professor of Art and Design at the College of Architecture, Art and Design at the American University of Sharjah. On my right, Anas Bhurtun, CEO and co-founder of ArtsDAO, the Middle East leading Web3 community. And Fabin Rasheed, who is an artist, designer, innovator, technologist, and many more things, which we'll find out now. Actually, Fabin, we'll start with you, because one of the things I want to talk about in this talk, just to pick up the vibe from the rest, we are also checking our vibe in this session, so to kind of continue the conversation from the rest of the summit a little bit, if you wouldn't mind telling the audience about your artistic journey, and what I mean by that is what how you fit into the international digital art scene, and how that mirrors or does not the digital, the Dubai art scene. And obviously tell us, first of all, you can introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your art as well.
Checking vibes. Yeah, thank you, Anna. Wonderful to be here in the panel. So I'll just give you a quick intro about myself. I'm a digital artist. Started as an engineer turned designer turned artist. I work with technology on topics of society, philosophy, and consciousness. I have been in the NFT art scene per se from 2020 onwards. I would say in terms of capturing the whole world together in one place, that is exactly what Web3 or the NFT art scene has been doing since I've been in this space.
Sorry.
No worries.
Totally my bad.
So when I entered the space, I was imagining this to be a completely new revolution of itself. And I found out that this was more than a revolution. It was a close group of people coming together, and yet globally around the world. So I was sitting at my home back in India, and I was creating these works, and suddenly I have an audience around the world. I could share my work to a number of people from different walks of life immediately as soon as I released it. And that was such a wake-up call for me.
Can I just ask you though, because that is something that we talk about a lot. That already existed, that kind of infrastructure. Or you mean Instagram, for example.
Yeah.
How does the digital art or Web3 scene differ from that technology which already was available? As an artist's perspective?
And that is where the community part comes in. And that is where I'm arriving at, where when I'm releasing this was, and the global presence which comes in, there is also this storytelling aspect to it, which comes through voices all around us. It's not just one person speaking their voice, but a voice is being built around the work from everyone around the globe. So that is the presence that I saw, and the diverse voices added value to whatever you're creating. And this is not just an artist that is coming, a group of artists that is coming into the scene, but there were, investors, builders, engineers, a lot of people from different backgrounds, from science to, different medical science, and a lot of other backgrounds coming towards, working towards the scene and building a lot of, output from this. And I saw this abstraction happening in Dubai, and that is what attracted me here. A summary of the scene, what was happening all around the world, it was booming so much in Dubai, and that attracted me here. And I was wonderful. It was such an opportunity to be part of the ArtsDAO family to begin with, and I had this wonderful collaboration with Morrow Collective. And since then, it has been a journey where I see that there is so much possibilities in this space, and I see a lot of that happening here and globally. And I don't see psychological divisions between any of these things. I see it's as a seamless, unified field of things. But I see a lot of it happening here also.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, that's really, I think that's what we wanted to get to. The community. The community aspect is obviously what makes the Web3 community different from a Web2 technological structure such as Instagram. And we are here today to talk about community. I think in Web3 communities, they're not just passive recipients of content, they are part of a community. Decision makers in many instances. And that brings us nicely to Anas, who is, as I mentioned, the founder or co-founder of the ArtsDAO, which is a large Web3 community. You will tell us more about it. But I just want to ask you, Anas, to begin first, obviously, by explaining what ArtsDAO is, but then quite quickly just also explaining why ArtsDAO, as we are at Art Dubai, obviously.
Sure. Thank you for having me. So ArtsDAO started off back in 2021. We were a couple folks who loved digital art and the, obviously, Web3 crypto scene. And there was just a couple of us, 10 or so, who wanted to collect these kinds of artifacts online. There wasn't really an outlet or a place for this because at the time, there was very little knowledge about crypto, art, etc. So we started off building this community, myself and my other co-founders, and it quickly snowballed into becoming something a lot larger. What we ended up doing is that we actually released our own collection of digital art, and we raised about 1.5 million in doing so to create a sort of our own museum, which has collected now $1 million plus of digital art from folks from all over the world, etc. This has led to the creation of a so-called kind of membership club, which includes my fellow panelists here. And in doing so, we have hosted various different types of exhibitions, conferences, our own festival. We've taken our community to Colombia. We've done different types of things to channel that community and also include art at every stage as well.
Can you explain how that is supportive? Obviously, the structure of a community is great. It binds people together socially and also network, business, and those kinds of opportunities. But for the specifics of the art industry or community, the digital art community here, how is that important for supporting the infrastructure or the creative economy here in Dubai?
It's super important because if you think about digital art prior to this sort of period, it didn't have the same recognition that your sort of traditional artists would have, right? If you think about what a digital artist sort of does, they create designs through digital mediums. They use different types of tools. They're not painting with traditional sort of tools that traditional artists use, right? They're using different types of software. And there was a lack of recognition of these pieces as being recognized as art. Some collectors or some people might have said, this is just graphic design. This is not real art. And so there wasn't really a voice to represent them until Web3 gave these digital works a kind of validation, because they could be sold for Ethereum, right? Prior to that, selling art without that was a bit challenging, because you could have multiple kind of copies of that JPEG or MP4 file, etc. So we now have a new movement that has emerged in the last 3-4 years. You can't look at an artist in the digital sphere and say that they're not an artist anymore. They are an artist. They're making millions of dollars, more than even traditional artists, which is to me a fantastic recognition of where the space has gone.
Okay, I will correct you on that timeline just a little bit, because as you know, if you've been in the digital section, we are looking at the history of blockchain art, which is actually 10 years old this year. But what did happen in the last 3 or 4 years is significant, because it catapulted into the public's lexicon, language. Everybody was talking about these NFTs. And just as a side note, I think it is really important to recognize that digital art has been around since computers, since the 70s. But what blockchain allowed it to do is obviously value, as you said, validation, but also value. And that's what is really interesting actually about Art Dubai's stance as bringing the digital section here is one of the only fairs in the world that has given that space validation. And again, should it be separate? It's a very interesting another debate. But what I think is interesting about what ArtStyle also does is because you have galvanized a community, which, as Fabin said, is really the differentiator between Web3 and Web2, and because you have organized lots of events and a community where people can network, it supports the creators in that community to find new audiences, to find new platforms, and collectors, which is really, really important for all artists, as we know. I will move to Faisal on my left, because Faisal is also part or co-founded another kind of community, and I would like you to talk about Crypto Oasis. Obviously, Anis's DAO and your Crypto Oasis are different, but it's a similar, it's in its need to build community. So the first thing I would like you to say is to explain to the audience, what is Crypto Oasis? It is a blockchain ecosystem. Now that is a lot. A lot can fall under that title. So can you just explain what you do, first of all, at Crypto Oasis?
So I'm one of the co-founders and the CMO of Crypto Oasis, and like you defined, the blockchain ecosystem. So when you're looking at a blockchain ecosystem, you're looking at all players. You're looking at collectors, you're looking at artists, you're looking at government, regulators, investors, technology, education. So all of that fits into a cohesive ecosystem. One of the easy things for us was this was already done at Crypto Valley in Switzerland. Mm-hmm. So once the boom started in Dubai with Web3, and we'd partnered up with the DMCC to set up the first crypto center. And one of the first licenses that came out was NFT marketplaces. So a lot of people were moving here from all around the world because, I wouldn't say regulation at that point, but the ease of setup and communities over here was so diverse that it was easy for them to find an audience. It was easy for anyone to find an audience. And what we've done with the likes of art, so ARTE, was we wanted to give creators, and not necessarily artists, right? Creators of like metaverse, of games, of digital art, a space where they could interact, where they could show their projects, where they could, find other aspects that they could explore in the region. And for this, we've done, we went around to do more than 100 events a year, and we continue to do those.
I definitely want to ask you about the art talks in a minute, but I want to take you back to something that you said, because obviously we've been talking a lot about the artistic, community-driven side, but you're talking about something which is also important to discuss, I think, in this panel, because you're talking about the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. You're talking about people who come to Dubai because they find ease, you used that word, in setting up and being... is legitimate the right word? But like as a business, you're talking about the business side. And I think that's interesting because Dubai, we have noticed at Morrow Collective as a gallery, how many people come here for, yes, for art, and yes, for, Art Dubai is a crossroads of, Dubai is a crossroads globally, geographically, and culturally, and all these stories merge here. And Art Dubai as a fair has been talking about that. But interestingly, the crypto global community, they call themselves digital nomads, if I'm not mistaken, come here for why do they come for that infrastructure?
It is the infrastructure, but it's not just from a business infrastructure. One of the things that the UAE did beautifully was during COVID. Like the way the leadership handled that crisis was better than anywhere else in the world. You could have all the money in the world and you would be in Germany and Italy and be locked into your houses and you can't do anything. Whereas the way they handled it over here, you could actually continue life. So from that perspective as well. And the UAE is always seen, I would say, they look into the future and they see what's going to come or what they think is going to come and they build for that. The internet city, healthcare city, they opened up as just infrastructure without anyone being there. And now when you look at it, it's completely populated.
And how does that reflect, though, with specifically Web3 people? I mean, is it the same? They kind of built the infrastructure, like what do they say? Build the castle and they will come, or something?
Yes. So, like you're talking about digital nomads, like one of the things that they came up with over here was the freelance visas. Now, setting up businesses, coming over here, living over here, golden visas for engineers and doctors. So it's just made so much easier to just come in and set up. But I know this from Switzerland. Try and hire 5 people in a year. Like, okay, you've hired the people, you've got them visas. Now let them try and find a place to live. We set up Binance Tech with the Crypto Center about 2 years ago. Within 6 months, they had 600 people here. But you can't do that anywhere else.
Same with the construction. They build a building in 2 minutes. Okay, thank you. Just one more point before we get to you, Zinka. Last, but definitely not least. Art talks, or art as the arm of Crypto Oasis. Art talks for the audience is a monthly event that you do?
So we were doing this bi-weekly, but then as it grew over time, now we try and have them close to larger events because that's when the international speakers are around. So we had one of them during COP28, and then before that we had it during the Satoshi Roundtable, because you've got all of these influential, great speakers, CEOs of companies and founders that only come over here for a certain amount of time.
So just a quick note on how that reflects to what you do with Crypto Oasis, the bigger picture that we've talked about. Why is it important for you, as a homegrown initiative to bring these people and put them on stage and make these events? How does that support the community?
Well, first, they wouldn't get access to these people otherwise. Well, the Satoshi Roundtable is a closed event that you can't get into, and if you do want to get into, the tickets are like $25,000. So first is to bring them in so that they can share their views, because it's not just about watching them talk. It's also being able to interact with them, and that's when you can move on to your next point, which is education. It is so that they can understand how these people became successful, what their plans are, what they're doing in Dubai. So it helps overall to define the vision of Web3 when you actually see these people live.
I know that was an obvious question, but I really did like to hear your answer. And yes, of course, you can add something, Anas.
I think it's really good what he's saying, and I want to just add a couple points to what Faisal's saying. Effectively, if you think about what digital art captures right now, it's several different areas. You've got, initially, you've got a bit of gaming, you've got art, you've also got artificial intelligence, and you've got that sort of metaverse side, and you've got engineering, software, right? These are novel areas that require different types of people to create. You have engineers who are becoming artists. You have computer scientists who are becoming artists. So the traditional professions that traditionally went to civil engineering or building computers are now leading to a creative profession. So that's the one side, on the talent side, which he was highlighting. There's the other side on the regulatory side. So I used to be a lawyer. I practiced here for like 6+ years. And what I've seen is the regulatory environment, right? You've got the government passing laws in favor of metaverse. You have the government passing laws in favor of AI. You have laws being passed in favor of crypto. So you have an incredibly favorable environment now for 6 different strands of knowledge that together, when combined, creates a creative storm, right? And on top of that, we need to build community around this, right? You can't just have this creative storm happening without creating some kind of energy. So the Arte Talks, for example, draw these CEOs to kind of come around and talk about these things. We do the same thing, but in a different kind of way around culture and meme culture and all that other weird stuff that we do. But it brings people here, right? And I think that's just a little bit of sauce that I wanted to add there.
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, that's why we're here. The question I asked you, Faisal, was obvious. How does it? But it needs people like you guys to actually do it, to get those people on the stage, to spark that seed of inspiration into the audience. It leads me perfectly to Dr. Zinka. I just want you to respond, if you don't mind, to what Anas just said, because he talked about the convergence of art and tech, about people like Fabin, who was an engineer becoming an artist. And I know that's actually something that you've talked about a lot. And it's this kind of the magic that happens when these two perhaps sides of the brain meet. I mean, talk to me about that and how important that is at a younger age, in education.
Absolutely, and I think revolution in education is in order in a way to meet the future. and everything that is happening based on the technological advancements, because studying a discipline-specific area is no longer serving students who are actually even attending universities at this moment, because we don't know what's going to happen in 2-3 years. And just the fact that you said your background is engineering and yours is law, and you're in this sphere, speaks of this importance. So I guess I'm representing educational undergraduate, graduate programs institution, but I want to also point out the discrepancies that we have in between industry and academia still at this very sphere, which could be, not to say dangerous, but they pose a certain problem, because we are dealing with young people who are almost afraid to tackle this because it's still an unknown territory. And why don't we, so for example, in our case, we do have workshops, we bring in speakers, but it's very difficult to offer a legitimate course because the technology is advancing at such speed, and faculty who are teaching it must be also well-versed in other areas, because it's very interdisciplinary, as you're saying. And usually at university level, we focus on a certain field in terms of research or creative scholarship in this case. And this is why I think it's very important. It's a wonderful opportunity. I'm so happy to be here to actually start a conversation that would create a bridge between industry and academia, because we cannot exist in silos anymore, as it was the case before. And students are also today going to be expected, as all of us are, to be lifelong learners, because education does not stop the moment you get a degree, whether it's undergraduate or graduate. It used to be like that in our generations. You would then get a job and be well set off to continue until retirement. But today everything is fluctuating, and this sphere is so interesting, and I think untackled enough, not approached from the right angle in terms of formal education. So this would be something very interesting to talk about.
Okay, that is just fabulous, because this talk is titled Building Consensus in Dubai's Digital Art Scene.
Yeah.
What you've talked about now is something super interesting, a fear from students and perhaps from faculty to not, one second, like not be perhaps knowledgeable enough in an industry which is changing so much all the time, where everybody, needs to continually adapt, and the children of today are living in a world which is, the gap between the generations is so much bigger because everything is changing so quickly. But so I want to ask you a question, and then I'm going to throw it to the rest of the panelists. Feel free to join in. But so you're saying that obviously in a formal structure such as education, it's really important to inspire these children to do something so that they can be change makers, they can be community, they can be artists if they want, they can be whatever. But to do that, you need a formalized education agreement, a consensus, so a curriculum that people sign off on, and this is okay to teach our children. And my question is, do you think that the shift that's needed, do we need that kind of consensus, or do we need to be more radical in our thinking?
I think we absolutely need the consensus. Academia is very bureaucratic. It's a slow-moving, slow-growing institution. So I think we need these shifts as well, and maybe additional modalities through which we can tackle this issue. For me, also talking about design or art as a discipline, this is changing very much, not so in the sense of course they are creators, but they're also going to be responsible for giving counsel tomorrow when they're hired as designers, because designers create new futures, they imagine, they come up with new ideas, and then also artists as well. So how do you ensure that, and this is why community is very important, because then they're surrounded with mentors, with advisors, with people who can provide context so that they can really create responsibly and create purposeful innovation, so to speak, in all of these digital spheres. And as I said, it's really a challenge because the technology is moving at such speed that the moment something comes out, it's almost already obsolete. There's the next thing. So how do you catch up with that with a very slow-moving institution? To me, industry, connection with the industry, and allowing students to learn as the experts are obviously advancing the field from
It's a really interesting debate that you're picking at here, and I can see Faisal has something to say.
Because, look, so my background, I'm from a consumer psychology background, right? You've always had the books and the professors, they're all versed in it, they all speak the same language.
Yeah.
And then when you're looking at regulation, as Anas was mentioning earlier, each field from engineering to, to medical to even architecture, there is a regulation that that guidelines that monitor it, guidelines that you do something wrong, you're a doctor, you lose your license, right? And I think from a regulation point of view, it is still not mature enough to go into that field where the education just streamlines and that's what's being taught everywhere. It just keeps on changing so quickly. Even the regulations, they don't know how to regulate something that's just come out yesterday.
That's the problem.
So I think maybe you can talk about it a little bit from a regulation point of view as well, because from Switzerland, they did start with this, right? But over here, they're still working on it.
Well, Fabin, you have something to say?
Not on the regulation point, but I have something else. I can wait for
talk about
Anas.
the regulation. We'll come to Fabin.
Okay, on the point of regulation, law moves very slow, right? It can't regulate fast enough to meet the creative demands that are coming across every day. So I think what happens is we operate in a gray area for some period of time until the law can catch up, right? When we created ArtsDAO, we built this DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. We did all this stuff. There was no regulation around it, and we just created it. And some people said, Anas, you're out of your mind for doing this. You're going to get in trouble, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, you don't create new things without pushing the boundaries a little bit, right? You have to try it out. And maybe you get burned, you get in trouble sometimes, but you can ask for forgiveness afterwards. And often, a lot of regulators actually want to see this regulation happen, want to see this creativity happen, and then they can figure out the regulation afterwards.
Sandboxes, right?
The sandboxes, right? So this is what I've sort of seen. Here we have the Virtual Assets Regulatory Authority, regulating digital art on the blockchain and crypto, but we have new regulatory bodies coming out for artificial intelligence. We have new regulatory bodies coming out for computer-related designs. We have new agencies around IP, because this is a very big part of any art piece, the IP side, and it's not very developed out here in the UAE. But the UAE is just watching and saying, okay, this is happening, we're seeing this getting sold, we're seeing that getting sold. Let's try and figure out if we can let these guys build. Why are these artists getting golden visas, right? We see all kinds of creative artists here getting golden visas, but they're not doing things that are necessarily within the law, but the government's like, let them build here, and let's see whether they will create something wonderful. And if we need to put a law here, we'll put a law here.
Let's not suggest that the Dubai government are allowing people to break the law.
Something that's where the education part comes in. So Crypto Oasis is one of the founding members of D2A2, which is the Dubai Digital Asset Association. And they had a roundtable yesterday in the Chamber of Commerce where they had, 70 or 80 different players from the market that actually sat down across from Bara, to ask them questions to see where this is heading. But what I'm missing from there is, how does that translate into education? Everything they've discussed, every law that's coming in, every rule that's being signed on, how does that translate to the newer generation that's coming in? They're learning, they're picking up stuff that's happening in Switzerland, because now you're looking at a global village, right? They need to know what's happening over here. Right now, you can't launch tokens in this geography, but everything you're looking at online is a token being launched over here and a token being launched over there.
I think it's a really interesting point that we've got to, because we're talking about breaking consensus to a certain extent. Innovation comes from asking forgiveness, not permission. I did not say that. But also the need for, obviously, frameworks and laws and regulations. We can't, so...
Or for it to become official,
Yes.
Because otherwise it can't be taught.
And I think Dubai is an interesting place for that, because it does, as you mentioned, it is innovative, embraces innovation. We have so many strategies, 10x strategy, the forward thinking, sorry, I can't get that word out, future thinking, forward facing city. That's why perhaps people come here. But in education, I'd actually like you to answer that question that Faisal just asked you. How does, if you get VARA and you get the government and you get people who are making the regulations in roundtables, in communities, which is what we've been talking about, talking, working it out, how can we make this happen? How can we make it possible for artists to operate without too much structure? How does it trickle down to education?
Well, I think there's the context of making that is already applicable to education, but I think it's more so about the structure, the regulations, the policies, so that students feel safe and in terms of not breaking any ethical code this dynamic within the technological environment needs to be defined so that we, again, have clear regulations on what we can introduce as valid knowledge, but how to solve the problem that if we have this in the fall semester, in spring semester, things might change,
right.
And how do we make sure to keep up with the pace and stay current, stay informed, stay relevant? That's the question.
How to connect with the child where the world is changing more quickly than
I mean,
we can.
it's already a challenge for students because the world, as I said, that they're going to go into, the current students, is not going to be the one that they thought when they entered the university.
Yeah, no, I can completely relate to what she's saying because, I also teach in my own way, in a couple of institutes, and the fact you talked about learning for learning or learning about learning how to learn, now that is one of the most important skills that can be right now imparted to students and for themselves to learn. I believe the whole system is changing so fast, as all of us have shared here. For students to understand that there is a need for exposure in terms of not just reading about these technologies, but using them as such, right? We do that in our institutes a lot. But what we have it here is that we see this in all walks of our lives. We see it in, if you go to Museum of the Future, if you go to any of these institutes, we have all these new technologies being used. If you're here in Art Dubai, in the digital section, we have these things. So this exposure comes so much more important than, personally, I feel when I teach students, they are far ahead of, even, I try to be current in much of the artificial intelligence and, spatial computing understanding right now, but they are far ahead of me. I can't catch up with them. But I understand that, that is needed. That should be the push. We will be, I feel like, more facilitators than imparting knowledge is what is happening, right?
Exactly. If I can just add, my background is educational psychology, and I'm kind of like the anarchist from within. I do believe reform in education is extremely needed, and it's urgently needed because we are running the same system, on the same system that was developed during Industrial Revolution to produce obedient workers where I talk and someone else listens. And kids today, it's not just the attention span that happened after COVID, I think, for all of us, but they cannot learn that way. And the difference between what we have today available and what our generations, and when you think the system was created, as I said, to produce 30, 40 cohort of 40 people learning exactly same things because someone said so, they need 8 years for absorbing this knowledge, and out they go and they're stuck somewhere in the bureaucratic job. The world has changed dramatically, and yet we are still in the same model. And the main difference is that our role as professors is not to teach anymore, and I really believe that. Why? Because at our time, the only sources of knowledge was a library, a book, and a professor, the time before internet, that I still remember. Now, knowledge is not scarce. They push the button. They get all the knowledge they want. What they're looking for and need are mentors, are people who will help them to learn how to learn so they can continue on their own. And this is where I think if there's a shift in that mindset on a higher level in terms of redefining education, but it's very hard because changes that are needed for this generation will be retired by the time the changes that are meaningful for them will occur. This is how slow moving, and globally, not obviously in the UAE, actually here it's even more advanced. But we do have that opportunity to create then stronger bridge between academia and the industry, which is much needed.
I wanted to add something at this point, which is really relevant. It might be a bit controversial, or it might be a little bit uncomfortable to hear, but I've worked with 70+ artists through ArtStyle, some of which are pretty critically acclaimed, like Christelle Bashara, Rank SSS, who has like 400K followers on Instagram. And what I've noticed is we're now living in what's called the creative economy, right? And perfectly kind of connected to the creative economy is the attention economy, right? You cannot be an artist now without attention, which is the new kind of oil which fuels everything for demand, the secondary market for your work, etc. And artists who go out into the market now and only learn how to do their craft are going to fail completely. And I've seen that. I've seen 100 artists all fail. And when they come to ask me and ask why am I not working, I'm telling you're not building enough attention around your work, and you're not building enough attention in the right channels with the right collectors. So the challenge then is the artist needs to also become a kind of champion of themselves online. They have to learn they have to understand consumer psychology. They have to be on Twitter very well. They have to be on Instagram. They have to grow that following. And those artists...
Strong writing skills, communication skills.
And they don't learn this at university. They would never have learned this at university, right? And so those artists that I've seen who end up getting the brand deals, that end up selling out their collections, they're all the ones who learned very quickly about the attention economy and built a strong brand online. Then they go off and they sell out, just like that.
That's marketing. It's very true what you say, and I think I could go on a tangent, but there was one artist we worked with at Morrow a couple of years ago who had an extremely detailed business plan about not about his art at all, which was complex on its own, but about exactly this, how to build attention and where to go. And that's all to do with the fact that we live in a digital world and everything is digital and you need to have a digital presence, and it's you have to also know how to talk, and there's so many things. So I'm going to open the floor to questions in 1 minute. What I was going to say is that everyone's talked about community in a certain way. When you talk about, I've lost my train of thought now. I really had a good thing I was going to say. Fabin was talking about facilitating, not teaching. You were both sort of talking about that, which again comes back to this idea of community, because if you've removed that sort of traditional barrier of teacher versus class and one-way street of information. We talked about peer-to-peer, Web3, the difference being community. Then you understand that everybody plays a role, and therefore we can strengthen whatever is our communal goal. Do you want to say one more thing before I ask the...
Just one point that, we come to a point where we all are teachers and we all are students. So we all learn from each other. We all, teach others and share our knowledge. So yeah, that's what I see happening, especially in a larger communal sense here.
Did we come to a consensus that we need consensus? Would you agree, speakers? I think we need consensus, but we also need... Go on, Anas.
I think consensus is a problem in some respects, because when you have too much consensus, you lack innovation, right? The whole point of something creative is creative destruction. And that's always been my view on anything. I want to just give a strong example on one part. So I practiced law for a long period of time, right? But when I joined law as a trainee, there were about 75 people in a given cohort. That number has now shrunk to about, I'd say, 30. And the reason why is that artificial intelligence has replaced the role of the trainee solicitor in England very easily. So law firms only need 30 lawyers now. So artificial intelligence is going to continue to destroy industry, and we as humans need to change the way that we create value in this world to remain relevant. And I think that's very much tied to the creative economy, right? That's my last controversial point.
I love that. And I'm just going to take this, do you know what I'm just going to do? I'm going to shamelessly invite everybody to our booth after this, because there was one artist, and she's sitting in the audience, who creates work exactly based on this, exactly based on what AI, the potential of AI, the potential of a new economic model or a society model. Her name is Nili Lerner. She's in the audience. I'm sorry. But I'll tell you about her work in a minute. But would anybody have a question to any of the panelists about any of the things we've talked about today? I can't see anything because the lights are very bright.
Like on the beach.
Come on, I know there's a question out there. Yes.
I think more than a question, it's just an observation as a father of teenagers, right? I think you mentioned the school, the industry, and then it's us. How do I teach my kids? How do I'm not scared to let them explore, go out, because we learn in an old fashion nowadays, right? Also, where do you see the role of parents? Because we get scared about where my kids are going, what are they watching, should I limit them, too much screen? It's also a challenge for us. That's the only thing when I was, I saw the school, I saw the industry, and then the responsibility that we have. Yeah.
Zinka, do you
Should
want
I
to take that one?
answer? Sure. I hear you as a scared parent of a teenager as well. But as an educator, I've been in academia for 25 years, teaching in North America and here for the last 10 years. And I guess the question is, how do you rely on the educational system, right, versus the industry, and what can they do? I think they have to obviously develop a sense of responsibility. Without that, there's a lot of, and I'll now go into like a little bit of digression in terms of helicopter parenting and this generation of parents doing a lot of things for the children. And I see a lot of parents still in my office worrying about their children. But, we have to let them spread their wings. And I always tell my daughter, it doesn't matter, the grade or the result doesn't matter. What matters is that you give it your all. And I'm very adamant about telling students to find their passion. And we have some examples here, like my background is graphic design, and then I went into film, experimental film, teaching in media, and then I did my PhD in educational psychology. So we often imagine the trajectory to be straight, but it's very wiggly, and it's going to be more so for them. We expect this new generation to change 3 or 4 different careers in their lifetime, and this is going to be new normal for them. So as long as they're curious and creative and not afraid to fail and make mistakes and take risks, and this is what I tell students, it's not about getting a good grade. No one cares about that when you graduate. What they care about is obviously the character, and when people are hiring, they hire for 2 things, personality and skill. And it's personality over skill. This is also something that's very important. So I will not take more time, but curiosity and hunger and passion, whatever it is, to find that. And I always tell them, imagine you're standing at someone who's 17, 18, there are 10 doors in front of you. And you don't know where your destiny is going to lead you, but for you to understand and to know, you have to open and close each one. And even if you find out that's not for me, it's still an experience. So walking the talk is also very important.
Absolutely, wow. That was great. Thank you, Zinka.
No problem.
Is there any other questions in the audience? Yes, please. Jennifer, my colleague.
Thank you. I want to jump back a little bit to something you were saying, Anas, about the role of the artist. Now all of a sudden being they're not just an artist, they're not just creating what they want to do, they have to also become a marketing genius and be a social media presence and get all this attention. What upsets me about that is the idea that that, an artist, to really delve into their work, should be their full-time, if possible, it should be like their full-time focus. And I do believe that there should be people dedicated to lifting the artists and marketing the artists and all of that. If you can be the kind of artist who has all of the marketing know-how, like I know, Anna, you were talking about Orhan Mammadov when you mentioned the artist who was an eternal student who did fine art and engineering and business management, and he had all of the things, so he's probably doing very well. But I do think that there should be a role for, there should be a world coming where an artist can do their work, and somebody who loves art and loves talking about it can do their work. We're here talking about art, we're at a digital art, a hub here at Art to Buy Digital. So I do think that it's not just, I don't really have a question. Do you want to say anything?
I want to respond to that, actually.
Go on.
You can, but sorry, this is something that really, really is important to me, and Jen knows that very well, and I will allow you to respond. But I think what she's saying is, and to bring it back to this whole topic, again, community, it is, I agree completely with Jen. Obviously, we're colleagues. We actually are curators, and that's why we founded Morrow Collective, in order to give this support network to artists. But I think what I wanted to say was, if you can respond to that in the context of what we're talking about today, the importance of community, the importance of building or not building consensus.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we live now in a generation that has commodified a lot of things, right? And even art itself is becoming commodified in a way. The art in the past maybe was consumed or used for a certain type of purpose. Now it has different purposes because this is digital art, it's not physical art, right? Some people want to buy the art to make money, right? And that's necessary, right? You need a secondary market in order for the art to gain value. Often, if enough collectors collect the art, right, then other collectors want to buy it. And it's not even about the art anymore. It's just the fact that the price is so high, and so other collectors are buying it, and you're like, dude, I don't want to miss out on this hype. Let's keep on pumping this art all the way up. And that's also part of it, right?
But that's not just digital, right?
No, that's art.
This has been going on for centuries. Like Van Gogh cut off his own ear just so that he could create some noise around his art.
100%, yeah.
So this is
That's another debate, but anyway.
No, but it's you've had stunts like this being pulled all over history, where you're trying to draw attention. My only concern comes in, it's all right if an artist turns towards marketing to create some noise. The concern for me is when you've got marketeers that turn into artists because they know, how do I say it? They know the process. Yeah, well, because there are, like, you go around, even at your booth, there is some beautiful art, right? But then you see all the craziness that's online because people have understood the process. So that's where I think it just muddies up a little bit.
I have so many opinions about this, but I am the moderator. Yes, I think I'm not going to say... Look, we live in a global community, and again, I keep coming back to this word. It is really important to be able to get people's attention. It is really important to have people around you supporting you. It is really important as a parent to understand that you can also learn from your children. Like Fabin said, we're all students and we're all teachers. And go on, do you want to say something?
On the community part, right? So
Yeah.
this is where, okay, if you're an artist and you're trying to build a presence online, you need to join communities. So all the great artists now, 2024, started building community in 2021. I remember seeing them on Twitter, on Instagram. Rank SSS, who has an exhibition at Toda today, you should check her out. She has like 500,000 followers. She's a good friend of mine. She told me her story. I sat down with her and I was like, tell me your story. I want to know how you became, successful now. She's got a brand deal going on, amazing. But 4 years ago, she was an architect, okay? And then she learned computer engineering, and she combined her skills in architecture and computer engineering to build incredible art on Instagram. She had like 1,000 followers. She grew that progressively to 400,000. And now when she does an NFT drop or when she does this or that, sells out just like that. 4 years of community building online, talking to people, part of the art style community, part of other types of community. It's a lot of work, right? And so I respect her because she came to me without the knowledge of, she didn't say to me, look at my art is amazing, why aren't people buying? She's like, she knows that I'm gonna build distribution alongside building my art as an engineering sort of piece of perfection, and then I'm gonna sell out. And I'm like, respect, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, Fabin, I can hear you want to respond. I mean, definitely,
Yeah,
definitely. I think that.
So let's build consensus. I'll try to, but I resonate with Anas in terms of what's happening right now, and I love how you put it in terms of, as an artist, we have to put ourselves out there, to market, to build communities, and do everything together. But where I perhaps have another thought is art itself as a commodity, as we mentioned. Perhaps there is also this other vector where we can think of art is about building culture and also building stories and building conversations. So for me, that brings out a lot more value for an artwork which I create or which I view someone creating it. So I feel the role of the community is larger than, of course, the building of the brand and the statement is important, but also the fact that there is a lot of conversation. There's a lot of understanding of the work and the story behind the work, story behind the artist, how the artist's journey led to this particular work. Those things are really valuable for me. And I think, as a community, we can bring out both voices out together, right? All of it together. So, and that's where I feel like, we are all teachers and we are all students. We learn from each other and try to grow that up together.
I think what you said beautifully is basically that we are all important part. I'm going to get really spiritual here. We are all one, but it's true. Everyone has their own journey and their own story. Community is crucial, whether that means structured or disruptive or spiritual. I know you're very spiritual, Fabin, in the way you see the world as well. And I think that Web3 is this idea, that Web3 philosophy is built on the fact that there is no decentralization. Whether or not that kind of utopic system will infiltrate a world which is governed by power structures, we never know. But I think the idea in the art scene and the creative economy, as we're talking about, it's so important to do that, to learn from people, to be inspired, to be agile and resilient and make mistakes and be disruptive and also be in a place, I think, like Dubai, which is not one thing. It's very multifaceted. And that's the only way I think that people can really make a change. That was my comment on everything. We've got like 2 minutes. Is there any more questions or shall I wrap up? There's one. Nilly! I can't see anything. Nilly is there. Is there another one? Okay, this is Nilly Lerner, the artist I was talking about earlier. She's at our booth, and I know that a lot of the things we've spoken about will resonate with you. Go ahead, Nilly.
Yeah, I actually like to... Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I like to comment on the marketing issue. I think right now we live in a time in between that there is so much information and our ability as humans to consume it is very limited. And this is why marketing and attention takes such a central stage. But it also creates a huge distortion between what is really valuable and who can present what is valuable. This is why we get horrible...
I think your mic is not working properly. Is that what she's going to... Sorry, can everyone hear, Nilly? Or... Yeah. Okay.
This is also like why we have such horrible leaders those days, because they can market themselves, and there is no way for us to process information in a way that we can actually process the value behind this information. And I think this is where AI is going to come in a big, big way. It would allow to process all that information and evaluate it in a way we are not able to do it, and it would service us to actually go beyond the marketing and actually see the real value and the real people and the real action and what their adding to this world, not just their ability to market themselves. And I think it's going to be so major to the way every human can eventually bring the best of what they are into the world and have it being basically expressed there, but also like add to everything in the best way. So I think the fear of AI is gonna really make policymaker kind of try to stop it. I don't think they'll be able to stop it, but I think they'll have a hard time seeing beyond the fear of AI. And I think the crypto community that understand the decentralization might be helpful in helping realizing how AI and decentralization actually are two lines that gonna meet. And once AI is decentralized, it loses all its risk, and it's actually become an extension. Each of us would have its AI extension, and those AI would be able to sum up the information for us in a way that would be much more valuable.
Thank you, Nili. Definitely fascinating ideas about the future of...
Happy thought, saved by AI.
Okay.
At the end.
The last question, is it really, really quick? Can you make it super quick? Perfect.
Hi, my name is Lama, and I'm a master's student right now in Arts and Culture Management in Rome, right? And I think this is what lacks the community, the managers that has the management skills and monitorizing and having the knowledge to manage an artist and giving him the direction in the AI realm and in innovation and in the marketing and so on. So right now in this world, like this is how I see it, this is the missing part of the community. Each one must have a mentor, like even in life, right? So the missing part are these characters who have all this knowledge about this information and innovation and so on that can guide the artist to be unique. They have their individual touch, their input, their impact in the community that you were talking about. Everything comes together. So for me, like, more characters in that world must be around. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great way to close. I think this is also the close of the Digital Summit. Thank you to the Art Dubai team who put it together. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks to my panelists for coming. And thank you
so
to the
much.
audience.
Thank you for coming.
And enjoy the rest of your fair. Thank you.